Radio Raheem here with Carl Froch. First of all, welcome to Las Vegas. I've had to come over to your neck of the woods on your pond quite a few times. And we're embarking on 2017, which for the first half is looking like a fantastic year of boxing. So I'm going to run down these fights, a list, and we're just going to check them off. So if I can get your opinion and your prediction on them, great. Obviously, we're here for Carl Frampton and Leo Santa Cruz. I'm going to open that up with Carl Frampton being Fighter of the Year. Huge honor. How do you think he earned it, and what do you think that changes a fighter at all?
Well, it gives him confidence. It gives him belief. A lot of fighters don't lack belief, but it just gives them that, solidifies everything they think about themselves. So, that Ring magazine front cover, that Fighter of the Year, really makes them think to themselves, you know what, I've earned this, I deserve it, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be getting this. So it's good for a fighter. And we're talking about Frampton Santa Cruz rematch, and I think it's really going to be a humdinger. It's going to be a real exciting fight. It's going to be very similar to the first one. I think if anything's going to change, and I don't know if he's going to want to do it, Santa Cruz, but if he can use his range, use his jab a little bit, he's got so much height advantage and reach, which is a massive advantage in boxing. Having reach on somebody, you can just get ahead of them. But Frampton, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to slip and slide, and he's got good timing. He uses his feet very well. So maybe, Frampton's that good that Santa Cruz can't use his jab and can't utilise his advantages of that reach. So I think it's going to be same. I think early on, I'm looking at the Garcia fight, who's also on the card, which is a great fight, but right. Early on Santa Cruz is going to use that range a bit and box and move, but ultimately he's Mexican and he likes to fight and he likes to throw a lot of punches, and he's not going to throw many punches sat behind his jab, so he's going to end up in close quarters, in range, exchanging blows, and it's going to be toe to toe, back and forth, round after round. We're all going to be salivating, watching it, smiling, enjoying it, and I think the result, unfortunately for Santa Cruz, is going to go Frampton's way again, because Frampton gets better and better every time he fights, and I like the little adjustments I see fight after fight with his defence, his movement, his head movement. When he's throwing shots, he's not wasting stuff. He just seems to be more polished. But Leo Santa Cruz is a fantastic fighter, and this is boxing. It's a two-horse race. Anything can happen. But if I'm having a bet, I'm putting the money on Frampton. Who
is the favorite? And a lot of times when a guy wins even a close fight and they do it again, if they both do the same thing, the guy who won the first time wins easier the second time. So answer me this: what could Leo Santa Cruz do to get the edge in this one and let us come back for a rubber match?
Well, I think I've just said it there. I've talked about the reach and the jab and just keeping that boxing skills going. He doesn't like to use his boxing skills. He's obviously got ability. And if he can just utilise that jab and that stance, I can't express enough how important and what much of an advantage it is to use your reach. All the best fighters over the years, if you look at the top fighters, let's pick a couple. Let's say Muhammad Ali, and let's say Roy Jones Jr. and Sugar Ray Leonard. And you can't put Mike Tyson in the mix, because Mike Tyson was an out-and-out fighter. He was brutal. But anybody who reverted back to time, if it was struggling or if they was getting on top and it was hard for them and they were taking shots, just get behind that basic jab. Just use the jab. Evander Holyfield used to use the jab a lot, then move in behind it.
Takes discipline, like you said, because he's likely to be drawn into a fight. Mentally, how much does this play into it? Because he said that this fight, it's all on the line. If this doesn't go my way, then that probably is it. He's used the word retirement. Do you see that as a weakness in a fighter, or is that something that can actually motivate you to do better?
I think my last 4 fights as a boxer, when I was fighting, my last 4 fights, I said, if I lose this, I'm going to retire. The first one was Lucian Butte. I absolutely hammered him. No one's done that to him. The champions now, Badou Jack, James DeGale, they've had a draw and a close split decision win, respectively, against somebody I hammered on the back of saying I'm going to retire. And then I went on and fought George Groves in the first fight. I was going to retire if I lost that. And then a rematch. I said I was going to retire before the fight. I retired after. I still performed, and probably some of the best performances. I mean, I had a great career. I've fought, my career. I've fought some of the best of the best, and I've had time and time great performance. Jean Pascal, my first world title. Jermaine Taylor comeback. Arthur Abraham was a flawless victory. The rematch with Kessler. So I'm probably a bad example, because I'm not giving myself a big head here, by the way, but I fought the elite time and time and time again. But at the end of my career, when I said if I lose this, I'm going to retire, I meant it. But it was the best. And this is a little bit what I'm worried about. We'll probably move on to it. Anthony Joshua Klitschko at Wembley. This is the last we're going to see of Klitschko. So he might just come and really cause an upset. But Santa Cruz, Frampton, we should say Frampton's Santa Cruz. I think Frampton's going to win that fight.
All right, now before we get to your side of the pond, I'm going to try to do this chronologically. So we're going to stay here and move across the country to New York, where we're going to see Keith Thurman versus Danny Garcia. Again, two guys that are willing to take a fight at a time when it's really the most interesting and scrapping it out for who can claim to be at least at the top of their division. How do you see that fight matching up? And is either fighter taking a bigger risk than the other?
I think Keith Thurman. Maybe Garcia's taking the risk, but Keith Thurman, they're both great fighters, both really well schooled, well experienced. They both can punch, they both know how to box and fight. But for me, Keith Thurman just has that edge. He just looks the more polished and the more accurate, and I like what I see with his explosiveness. He's quite tenacious as well. He'll in close, he'll throw the shots, and he'll look aggressive, and he'll look like he means business. Where Garcia will fight and sometimes take a step backwards when maybe he should stay in the pocket a little bit more, just from some of the fights I've seen him in. But both great fighters, both can punch a bit, both can box, both like to fight. Keith Thurman, for me, has got the edge on that one. I mean, I like what I see with Keith Thurman.
Now, when I was last over on your side of the pond there, I saw the Chisora and Dylan White press conference, which made it was a huge dust-up. The table got thrown, and people there were very upset about that kind of behavior. And I'm wondering if you saw the press conference with Angel Garcia, Danny's father, here a few days ago, where these words were exchanged that were inappropriate, and people are responding to that. How do you view it, from the boxing culture in the UK, a display like that? Is it appropriate? Is it something that should be admonished or even punished? Should the guy be banned?
Depends on the nature of what's happened in this case. I think a word was used that's considered by me and many others to be extremely racist. It's a word that really needs eradicating from the planet, in my opinion. But unfortunately, with the rap culture and with the movie industry, the word gets used, and it's flippant, and it's quite a frivolous. It's used in a manner which is acceptable, which makes it difficult to say let's get rid. Mm-hmm. The way he behaved and the way he was talking is unacceptable. It's bad for boxing. There's nothing to be gained from that. But I just think that without trying to be disrespectful, he's a bit mad. Garcia's dad is a crazy guy.
We've got to take into account that he's mental.
He's looking after his son. He's got the best will in the world, but someone needs to tell him to just pipe down a little bit and calm it down. But like I say, his intentions are for his son. He wants his son to win, but he just goes about it all wrong. And no, it's bad for the sport. The fighters shouldn't be punished for that. He should be told, look, you're not allowed in here now. You're banned. You're not allowed in. Your son's obviously allowed in, but
right, of course.
You need to just step back a bit, because we're going on air, we're going public with this, and this looks bad for our sport, our wonderful sport. Derek Chisora, Dylan White, it all went off. The table got thrown. Eddie Hearn.
By the way, I thought that was my fight of the year, actually.
That was a great fight.
I wish they had seen it over here, but only us in the UK at the time were able to view it. I thought that was like the fight of the year. Well, we're going to move on because I want to keep you here forever. Yeah. So on the same night, we've got David Haye and Tony Bellew. That fight didn't have quite as much buzz until they had a dust-up. All these things are happening in the same period of time. How do you see that fight unfolding? And do you think that moment where they, touched each other at least a little bit with the phantom punch looked like, does that change anything? Does that make Bellew more angry? Does that David Haye more confident?
I think all it does, and unfortunately, we've got a position, we've got a situation in British boxing where we've got pay-per-view, and you've got it in America as well. And sometimes we see it in WFC, drama and dramatics, and needle, and is it hate? Is it genuine or not? It sells. People want to see it. They want to pay for something that they think is exciting. So, although David Haye and Tony Bellew is genuine, they genuinely don't like each other. I think they've got one eye on, this is a pay-per-view fight. If we can stir this up, then we're going to probably get better numbers. We're going to make more money, and ultimately they're fighting. They want paying. So it's a shame that it goes down that route, because I've only ever been involved in genuine needle. And this, I don't want to say this is fake, because it's not fake, but sometimes it's driven by another agenda. So it's a shame to see, but you can see why it's done. I mean, myself and George Groves was genuine needle. There was pushing and shoving at the press conference and around the table job, and the first fight was really controversial, so that sold itself. But the Haye Bellew thing, it's going to be a great fight while it lasts. Tony Bellew's my friend. I sparred with him many rounds, hundreds of rounds. You know, he's hurt me in sparring. And David Haye, I grew up with him through the amateurs. We won back-to-back medals in the Olympics. But if I'm going to separate the personalities, Tony Bellew, I love him to bits. David Haye, I love him equally. They're both good friends of mine. If I'm going to just say the fighters now, the boxer, forget the personalities. I just think that David Haye is powerful, he's explosive, and that explosive power and speed against someone like Bellew spells danger. But let's not forget, Tony Bellew is unbeaten as a cruiserweight, unbeaten. He's world champion, he's busy, he's got momentum. David Haye's coming back off this shoulder injury, and he's not fought anybody for 4 or 5 years since he boxed KLitschko. He's had 2 fights, but he's not fought anybody. We know he's not fought anybody. They're like, I could come back and fight that kind of level, but I cannot compete at world level anymore because I'm no longer active. So it doesn't prove anything. So we don't know what David Haye's going to turn up. The old David Haye that was knocking people out at cruiserweight, Sean Moore, the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world, David Haye, too much for Tony Bellew. But we don't know if we've got that David Haye. We're going to find out. And let me tell you something, if he gets past round 4 and Haye starts landing shots and Tony Bellew just chews it up like Pac-Man and smiles at him and says, guess what, son, there's 12 rounds and I'm coming for you, David Haye's going to be in a world of trouble, because Tony Bellew means business, he's tough, he's fit, he's done 12 rounds a couple of times, and he knocks people out that left hook for fun. So, as much as people think it's going to be one-sided, if Haye doesn't get Bellew early, this is one to watch. I'm looking forward to this one. March the 4th, I'm there ringside, I cannot wait.
Now, arguably the most exciting fighter in the sport right now, Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, who's just recently traveled to your side and knocked out, stopped in a vicious fashion, Kell Brook, is going to be fighting in New York, and he's taking on a unification fight with Danny Jacobs. Is that fight a close fight? You feel like Jacobs has a shot there? And what have you seen from Triple G? Where do you put him on the pound for pound list?
He's definitely got a shot. Jacobs is a good all-round fighter. He can box and move. He can fight up close. He's fit. You know, he punches a bit as well, and he's tough. So he's Golovkin's biggest test to date. I've not been impressed with Golovkin because I've not been able to say he's fought somebody or beat somebody that I really respect that highly. And I'm not including Kell Brook in that, because I do respect Kell Brook and I do rate him, but he's a welterweight. He's too small. So you can't count. All that did was show that Kell Brook's tough and he's got more heart than I thought he had. He went out on his feet. You know, the fight was retired by the corner. But it didn't show me anything else about Gennady Golovkin that I didn't already know. So I need to see Golovkin in a fight against somebody that I can say, you know what, this is a good fight for him. And if he beats this guy in style, I'm going to start to rate him a little bit more than I already rate him. And this is the fight. The Daniel Jacobs fight is the fight for him to say, that is a name on my record now that people can look at and respect. Jacobs has got a chance. He really has got a chance. And he shouldn't think that he hasn't got a chance. Golovkin's 34, is he 35 years old?
Yeah, 5.
You know, I know what it's like to be 35. I was 35 boxing, and it's hard. You don't recover between your training sessions. You don't enjoy the sparring as much. And the 12 rounds kills you. And you get hit more. As much as you think you still got it, you're not slipping them jabs. You're not ducking them right hands. So Jacobs just might get Golovkin at the right time. But Golovkin's one hell of a fighter. I just want to make that clear. He's a great fighter. Look what he did as an amateur. Look at the people he beat. You know, Andre Durrell, Lucian Butte, knocked him out in amateurs. I mean, great wins. And represented his country in over 200 or 300 amateur fights. He had a lot of fights, but that tells me as well he's got a lot of miles on the clock. And he's 35. He's obviously a good fighter, but we need to see him in with somebody. And if he beats Jacobs, which I think he probably does, you've got to say, you know, he's the favourite going into this fight. But don't be surprised if Jacobs really pulls it off, because he can pull it off. Golovkin then needs to fight somebody. He needs to step up to super middleweight and fight somebody.
The crown jewel of the sport of boxing since the first guy strapped on some gloves, the heavyweight championship of the world. We've got a few belts out there, but the most anticipated heavyweight fight, I'd say, in ages is going to take place at Wembley Stadium on April 29th. Anthony Joshua faces Vladimir Klitschko. Is that fight as competitive as it is interesting to the sport?
I think it's both, because initially when I thought Josh was fighting Klitschko, I just thought easy fight for him. Josh was so big and strong and talented. I've seen him in the gym for years. He's trained by my old coach, Rob McCracken. I've seen him in spars, I've seen him get hit, I've seen him get hurt, I've seen him come back. and finish strong. And we've only seen him, or the boxing fan has only seen him beating Charles Martin, and Dominic Breazeale was tough but not good enough. I don't even know what Molina was doing in the ring. What was he trying to do? Did he just come to get knocked out? But he doesn't do anything for Josh in terms of experience and ringcraft and setting him up for a fight with somebody like Klitschko, who by the way, now I think Klitschko is going to be at his best in terms of, he can't be at his best of all time because he's too old. But mentally, when he draws on that experience and uses that wisdom like Bernard Hopkins did through all of his 40s, right into his 50s, Hopkins, I mean, he fought on too long, Hopkins, but he was really good at 41, 42, right, 45 years old, still doing it, and all he did was he dropped his pace, he used the ring, he used his brain, he used his jab, he grabbed when he needed to, his distance, his feet, his footwork, his head movement, his punch selection. I'm talking about Hopkins now. Right. Klitschko has now had to adapt and change the way he fights as he's got older. You can forget the Tyson Fury fight because that was just a messy fight. That was just ugly and horrible and didn't really prove much. And Fury can fight as well, but Klitschko had issues going into that fight as well. His wife was in postnatal depression as well. I mean, they've gone public with that, so I'm not saying anything but people might not know that. But I've got 3 kids, and when your missus is depressed and upset, and I've been around it myself. I mean, Rachel didn't struggle with it, but friends, and most women get a little bit of something when they get emotional women. And when your wife's not right and it's not happy at home, you can't have a happy camp. And if Klitschko had all these problems going into that Fury fight, and then he's got Fury in front of him being horrible and jabbing and running and holding and being awkward and not there to be hit, you can see why he lost. So this is his defining moment now at Wembley. Big stage against someone like Josh, who's inexperienced, and that could be the key factor in this. And don't be surprised if there's an upset on the cards.
Do we see Tyson Fury in that ring? Wait, first of all, what's the upset? The upset would be Klitschko.
The upset would be for Klitschko to beat Joshua, because everybody's expecting Joshua to win. Okay. Joshua's the guy with the momentum. He's the golden boy. He's the Olympic champion, world champion, big superstar, global star. This guy might earn over 100 million quid before he finishes. He's that big. Right. He's loved. His sponsorship. He's got. He's transcending the sport. Everybody loves this guy. My mum, my missus, I'm a bit worried. My missus never wants to go and watch boxing. She wants to go to Wembley and watch this fight. I'm like, why do you want to go?
Yeah, we wonder how many of them are buying those tickets that sell out in 30 seconds.
Josh,
wives are buying.
I've known Josh for years. I've trained with him at the English Institute of Sport in Sheffield for the last 3 or 4 years of my career. He's a genuine guy. He's such a lovely gentleman. So the way I can explain him. So people like him for all the right reasons. But I expect him to win. But don't be surprised if it's difficult, and if it goes to points, he might just get outboxed.
Maybe the polar opposite of Anthony Joshua is Tyson Fury, struggling with drug addiction, struggling maybe even, I have no medical analysis, but probably like some kind of mental instability at the heavyweight division in a sport that's as brutal as boxing. Does he return? Can he come back? Will we see him in the ring again?
I'm not sure if we see him, but I hope we do. It's such an exciting addition to the heavyweight division, beating Klitschko and then just totally going off the radar and off the rails with all the issues you just mentioned there. And it'd be a shame if we never saw him again, because we don't talk about the fight with Klitschko as a classic and one that you're going to go home and re-watch and show your kids how to box and have a look at this guy like I do with Holyfield and Mike Tyson and Riddick Bowe and Lennox Lewis. But he gets to win. And he's awkward and he's ugly when he does it, and he's tricky, but you never know what you're going to get with him. It'd be a shame if he never came back. I think he should. I think he will do. He's young enough. But the mental issues, the other issues you talked about, it's a long road to recovery. We may not see him again, but I hope we do.
I don't think anybody would have predicted Carl Frampton at this time last year would come out being Fighter of the Year of 2016. Give me your prediction for 2017, just, rubbing your crystal ball. Who wins Fighter of the Year of 2017?
2017, it was so early on in the year, there's so many big fights to be made.
Right.
But the fight we've talked about already, Anthony Joshua, Klitschko, if Joshua beats Klitschko and can, take that scalp and put that on his record, after the inexperienced career he's had, for no fault of his own, by the way, the heavyweight division at the minute, it could be better. It's quite interesting, but there's no real, there's no, like I say earlier, there's no Tysons and Holyfields and Lennox Lewises and Riddick Bowes. There's none of them fighters what are dangerous, threatening, hard men in the heavyweight division. But if Joshua beats Klitschko, I don't think I'm going to see much after that could nick Fight of the Year, because that's one hell of a win at Wembley, my old stomping ground.
Radio Raheem with Carl Froch, man. I appreciate the time and all the candor, breaking down fights from here right through April. See you on the other side of the pond soon. Radio Raheem, Carl Froch.